Welcome back to the War Room. What an absolute gauntlet of a summer here. I know, DJ, it's still fuming hot down near by you in Nashville, 100 degrees. You're dripping sweat. You're ready for, cold weather Big Ten football, a little around the fire action. But it was an outstanding summer. We had action coast to coast from June in the NPI all the way straight through the end of the summer. And then still eyeing the All-American game in Miami. What a great time. And welcome back to being in person. I know you love that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Shooter. Good to see you. Hope you're feeling better. You haven't mentioned this because I've used it a lot, and I'm waiting to be on air because I want everybody to understand this. You're supposed to be very perceptive. You're the vice president of scouting. You're supposed to have a critical eye. You've never made a comment about the coffee mug. You're a coffee guy that I drink out of all the time. It's from the Czech Republic. Okay. It's from the Czech Republic when I went and saw Max Kepler. It's my souvenir. So
wow, you were on Max Kepler. Max Kepler played with him with the Twins, whose kid was still going to South Fort Myers High while coming over to extended spring.
So, yeah, it was not to digress here for a second, but I can still remember the food that we ate, the dinner that I had with his parents. His mother was from Texas. His dad was Polish. They're both in the German ballet. Max grows up playing soccer, and I'm over there for a whirlwind 3-day scouting adventure in Munich, Germany, or Regensburg, Germany. It was really, really good. He's a good player.
Oh, wow. The places it'll take you, international stuff. Well, good for you. I know the Twins, whether Australian, Russian, German, Czech, all over the place when I was with the Twins. It was really a melting pot.
And your question, summer scouting, it's the best. The summer high school stuff, it can be really grueling, especially with the transformation of the calendar. It really weighs on scouting directors. It weighs on area scouts. We can't be – guys are burnt out. That's the reality. When you push that draft back to July, guys are going to work to July on the present class. It's really hard to ask, and we've talked about this before. It's hard to ask them to do other things. So sometimes the summer stuff gets really, really, really difficult. But if you can slow it down, if you can understand the importance of what you're doing, how critical it is to set up that roadmap for the fall, and more importantly, even early part of next spring, you'll have a much better chance to get some really good value out of it. I know we're going to talk a little bit about hitters versus pitchers and some of those kind of things, what you're trying to get out of it, but it is very, very critical much more so for the high school players than it is the college players.
Now talk about how critical, and maybe start from the top down, right? You were in a scouting director position. Things end, you wrap out, you get your last guy signed August 1, August 2, whatever that may be. Hey, you just missed out on essentially the entire summer, especially for the Florida guys, Georgia guys. How are you shifting over? What is that turn of the page from the scouting director side? So not the area guy, not cross-checker. What is the scouting director doing?
Well, we've got a couple different ways to sort through the information now. We have a lot of data that we can source through a lot of different means, whether it's TrackMan or we utilize Blast Motion, and we've got all this different stuff, all these performance metrics. But you also have to be able to utilize your scouts. That's a really, really important. They're your eyes when you're not out there, and the scouting directors are not out there constantly. I was at area code games. I was at East Coast Pro. There were a number of scouting directors that did not even show up. Not because they don't want to be there, of course, but because there's a lot of other things that you have to do as you're wrapping up your previous class. So the data becomes very, very important. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And your staff becomes really, really important. And truth be told, you've got scouts, regardless of their titles, that are very, very good at the summer stuff. So as a scouting director, I think it's critically important that you understand which of your guys can understand the importance of the summer stuff, are good at the summer stuff, and they're motivated to be out there. They want to sit down there in the pit at 100 degrees, and they can just muscle through it, and they can give you the right answer. I'm not talking about a bunch of stuff. Guys that can actually give you the right answer becomes really, really important when you're the scouting director, because ultimately you're going to leave the summer and you're going to say, okay, there's the roadmap. Point the arrow in the direction that I have to go first. Where are the 10, 12, 15 places that I have to go first? And you rely on your guys. If you're the scouting director in the ballpark, well, then it becomes a great exercise in scouting for you. So
So now when you are in the ballpark, the guys who are there, the people go East Coast Pro, area code, whatever it may be at our All-American game,
Mhm.
are they coming in already with some knowledge? And the analytics department, whether it's synergy, I've talked a lot with, hey, this guy had a great summer. He did this. He had tons of hits. This guy didn't hit. This guy pitched. His strike percentage. All this data set. Do you walk in late in the summer? I've just closed the book on 24. Now I know I'm watching this guy. I'm watching Ethan Holiday here. I'm watching Seth Hernandez. I need to be
Yeah.
front row for this. Is that something you're doing?
Well, you and I talked about the futures game, and I made this recommendation. I don't know how many professional scouts showed up at the futures game, but in talking to you, talking about the area code underclass situation, I find it really, really important that organizations put themselves in a situation where they can identify those players early to answer your question for the national cross checker, for the scouting director. So when they get in their draft year, you have a feel for it.
Mm.
That doesn't happen. More often than not, you're going in blind, not completely blind. Maybe you're just going in with one eye covered. But most of the conversations that happen for organizations are me calling you and say, hey, shooter, you cover the West Coast. I need you to talk to your area scouts and just get me some names that are really, really high profile. We can extract them off of different lists that are published. But most often you'd like to go to your scout and say, hey, tell me about this evil guy that plays at Corona. Tell me about Billy Carlson a little bit. What should I be thinking about when I see the Brewers scout team? What should I be thinking about when I'm watching the Cardinals team that represents New England at East Coast Pro and I'm watching Jordan Serrano, or I'm watching Nick Becker, or I'm watching Aiden Ruiz, and so on and so forth? Most of those times those are conversations. So when I look at my roster, I've already got a little bit of a head start. Personally, I don't ask for details because I like to scout them objectively and unbiased. It's just enough for me to know that when I look at the Cardinals roster or the Brewers roster, the Yankees roster, so be it, that, okay, these are the 4 or 5 guys that I need to lock in on. If the other players do something, and I'm certainly not disregarding the other players, but if the other players are doing something that forces me to watch them, then absolutely I'll do that. So everybody handles it a little bit different, but I think the common thread is most teams don't have nuanced, detailed, precise information on the players because there's too much going on beforehand.
That's honestly a microcosm of prep baseball and even our earlier events for identification stuff for kids, and that parents need to know for recruiting wise. It's much easier to find a good player when you have a little bit of background just to know, hey, I'm going to lock in a little bit on this guy.
So here we go. All right. So I'm not working for a team. I'm working for you guys. I'm helping you guys, us, prep baseball, improve our processes and grow and evolve and all those kind of things. But to your point on what you just said, I was armed with more information going into the summer than I was with the team. Now, I didn't make a bunch of phone calls and call a bunch of our area scouts and state directors. No, I didn't do that. But you and I spoke, and it was clear when we were working down that list and I was showing up at this event or I was showing up at that event that we already had multiple years of information on those players. So it did give me, absolutely, it did give me a head start. I felt like I was ahead of the game. So it was good.
It's awesome. Let's talk even more about the summer as a whole. For this 2025 group, you're going in. What are you taking away as a scouting department? Is it more like, hey, this guy really had good success on the field, he really produced? Or is it more, hey, we took away that this swing works, there's plus power potential, he's a good defender? Is it more of a vague outline, we'll see him in the fall maybe, but more so we're going to go in the spring? Or is it the other side of it's imperative that this kid dominates if he wants to be a top 50 pick?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm not going to ask you to repeat yourself. I'm going to take another sip of my Folgers before I answer this one.
Folgers, you can bring back the good stuff.
I drink Folgers. Nobody drinks Folgers anymore. So now it is kind of a crafty coffee because nobody drinks it. That's how you define craft. Anyways, there's a lot to unpack there. And the goals of the summer, and they can be different for a high school position player versus a high school pitcher. But generally speaking, as a scouting director, as an organization, you want to leave the summer knowing who the high dollar guys are going to be. And the guardrails, I was working through this outline. We were thinking about what we were going to talk about today. I love the name. I love the word guardrails. I used it all the time not always in a meeting setting or whatnot, but when I was thinking about things, what guardrails am I setting up and what are my goals going in and how restrictive am I going to make it for certain archetypes to get into certain groups? Because once you put them in the groups, the lanes, the tiers, we use draft category when I was with the Marlins, whatever you want to call it, make no mistake, you will get anchored. And there's a danger to grouping players. So you have to be very conscious of that. Very, very conscious of that and what that will mean for a scout. So when you're going in, your goals are, yes, number one, you want to get them in the right lanes. Do you need specific information? Not necessarily, because ultimately what we're doing, I'm going to try to stay really focused on your question here. Ultimately, what we're trying to do, high school position players, we're trying to understand the profile of the player. I properly identify the tools of the player that can be identified historically through just subjective. You watch them hit, you see how far it goes, and you say, wow, that's 60 raw power. Now we've got some measurables. Got the exit velos, got some of that stuff. So you subjectively and objectively identify their tools. How does that relate to the profile? And then number three, how do they perform? One of the last things you said there was, does the guy absolutely dominate? They do not have to dominate. To be clear, a player does not have to go Brendan Rodgers style and go 15 for 10 at East Coast Pro with 3 home runs. And like, you don't have to do that. Usually, not always, the good players will have their moment. They absolutely will have their moment. If you would have followed, let's talk about Connor Griffin. He just went, he was 12, 10, right? What do you go?
I think 9.
9. Goes to the Pirates, right?
Yeah.
If you were to just measure his performance last summer, you might have been like, not really. You know where his moment was? At the trials. Man, was he good. The good ones will usually give you a moment that you can really sink your teeth into. So you've got the profile and the tools, and you've got the performance. What gets me really, really frustrated, and I'm not getting on a soapbox here, the messages that I'm getting right now as I talk about the summer with different people, when I start hearing performance, let me just put it out there right now. Is Xavier Nyans not a prospect because he didn't have the best summer? I think we know the answer to that one, right? Loaded with tools. Do we think that do we think that Ethan Holiday is not a great prospect because he swung and missed a little bit more than we wanted? Well, you know what? So did Gunnar Henderson. For the sake of argument, I'll just put it out there. He wasn't any good. Gunnar Henderson did not produce in the summer. I don't know of a scout or an organization out there that wouldn't want Gunnar Henderson in their organization right now. I don't know a scout or an organization that, how about this one? What would you do? Here, I'll throw this. I need to stop talking for a second, Shooter. What would you say if I said, hey, I like this guy, but he's got more strikeouts than base hits in his high school season? You know, like that would make you uncomfortable, wouldn't it?
Yes.
You know what wouldn't make you uncomfortable? Having James Wood in your organization right now. That would make you excited.
Right. James Wood, I mean, you talked about Gunnar Henderson. You go Max Clark, Dylan Head. All these guys struggled on the circuit.
That's
and
right.
They're going to be more than fine.
That's right.
And
so I hate that. I hate when people come to me with this guy can't hit because his swing and miss rate is that. I have done so much work on performance, high school performance. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it doesn't mean anything. But I will tell you that it isn't everything. Really, really important. I can give you a number of different examples. What's more important specifically with the high school hitters is getting the tool grades right, understanding the athleticism, paying attention to what you think his skill set is and his ability to execute those tools. And then take a look at the performance numbers. Because I'm not going to say it doesn't mean anything, but use it as an opportunity to ask questions. So if you're looking, we'll talk about Ethan Holiday in a second. We'll talk about Xavier Nyans. If you're looking at those players and you're seeing big swing and miss rates, the only thing you should be asking yourself is why? Why do we think that's happening? We know he's a good prospect, and the team that can do that, dive in and try to find some avenues to that player making those improvements. you're the team that's has the best opportunity to make a good pick.
One of the key things that you told me in the past, and I love this saying, I have it up over my desk. Are we scouting or reporting? And those were, it was just such a great way to put it where, hey, you went 4 for 4 last night. Hey, we're moving them up on our board, taking them out of these lanes. And to me, that's why the lanes became so important. And shifting over to our released overall rankings, top 500, right? And yes, they're 1 through 500, but in many ways, they're more horizontally stacked and in groups where 25 through 60 may honestly be in the same group if you're looking at that. Now there's positionality that we'll dive into here too in a second, but I'm even thinking back to a couple years ago. Braden Holcomb was a kid who swung and missed a ton. Florida kid, big physical frame, but tooled out. We had tiered him in a certain spot. We love the athlete, multi-sport kid, goes to Vanderbilt, struck out a bit this year, had a really good summer. We're eyeing what he's going to be doing his sophomore year, but that kind of helps getting them into those lanes where we're not going on a roller coaster. We're not going up because he had 2 hits this day and down because he went over with 3 strikeouts.
That's 100% right. And I think when I made that comment to you, reporting versus scouting, sometimes when you're on the team side, you look at the media, and we're a media outlet for lack of better words. We have scouts and we have this, but we're putting out content. And I think priding ourselves on the fact that we need to scout the players. That's really important. And it's very easy just to report when you're on the media side. That's the criticism that comes in our direction. And I think if we're very conscious of that, and it gives us a better opportunity to scout the player, so long as we're aware. But make no mistake, when you're a scouting director, when you're a cross-checker, when you're working in the office for a major league team and you read scouting reports, you would be surprised how many scouts report the news. They're not actively trying to do that, but they fall into that trap because they don't understand the difference between scouting and reporting. Reporting is, okay, I went to the area codes and Xavier Nyan's punched out, I don't know how many it was, 6, 7, 8 times. He's not good. That's incorrect. That doesn't make any sense, So to your point on that, it's very, very important to scout and not report. So
it's helped me over the years come to that, because it's easy to fall in the report. It's hard not to, right? We're in an industry where there's tons of failure, and that gives you statistical data to make you feel warm and fluffy. But I do want to shift over to this year's class and actually talk about some stuff. You can head to prepbaseball.com, check out the top 500. There are also a positional breakdown of some guys. We will dive into some of the tiering and kind of where guys are at, which, as DJ talked about, is so important about not making those rash decisions. I got to slow that one down, enunciate, and moving guys too far throughout the spring, which always drives me nuts, where it's like they're talking about second round on this guy. The amount of calls that you get, or at least that I get, about moving guys up and down is nuts. But DJ, I want to ask you right off the bat, right? Come over to us. You're kind of stuck in the dungeon there. We just had you in a little square screen on the War Room. You finally get to go out this summer. You get to see some of the top guys in the 2025 class. What was that one takeaway? What were you thinking as you walked away from this summer?
I was thinking 2 things: how much I enjoy being at the ballpark, how much you can get away from being at the ballpark. What I learned this last year was that you can actually rank players without being at the ballpark. It sounds a little taboo. It was amazing how much comfort I developed. And I think it was probably part of being a scouting director and having to be a good listener. So when I listened to you and I read some of your stuff and I listened to Seif, I actually developed comfort levels with players, which is a great thing. But to be able to go out to the ballpark and see how the players performed on the field, what kind of game presence they had, how they took pitches, all of that contextualizes how much how you feel about a player, which becomes really a lot of fun. Hard, but definitely a lot of fun. What was the takeaway? I think that was your question. As much as I can tell, thinking about what we talked about this past draft, there were some really, really exciting middle of the field players that I think are going to be really exciting for these scouting directors and these teams to evaluate next year. We can get really granular here and we can start talking about second base for a shortstop. Can he catch, or is he going to go to first base? Can he catch, or is he going to go to left field? Is he really a center fielder? But the bottom line is, if we just get back to base level scouting, what are the best players on the field play? Play right up through the middle, right? When in doubt, you get a young scout. Hey, when in doubt, just watch the shortstop. When in doubt, watch the center fielder. And when you came back and you started compiling all of your information from the summer, when I was compiling it was amazing how many players were revealing themselves as middle of the field players. So to me, that was really exciting. Does it turn into 2021 when we were dealing with Brady House and we were dealing with Colson Montgomery and we were dealing with Jordan Lawler and Khalil Watson, and I'm probably missing somebody. I say Marcelo Meyer. Like, there were a lot of fun, interesting, exciting players through the middle of the field. And we did the same thing in 23 when we had George Lombard, who the Yankees took. We had Aiden Miller, who the Phillies took. We had Arjun Namala, and so on and so forth. It gives me that feeling like we're going to end up with some really, really exciting players. And there is not a player that's more exciting to take for a scouting director or a team than something in the middle of the field and something that's really, really young, a prep player. So I'm excited about where we're going with this class. It's
so much value there. And let's hop right into it, because half of our top 10 in the high school ranks are up the middle guys, shortstops specifically. And we'll stick with shortstops for now. But Ethan Holiday, Brady Ebel, Kason Cunningham, Eli Willits, Billy Carlson. Those are 5 guys in the top 10, with Ethan remaining at that number 1 spot. And the thing that I liked about Ethan Holiday, you talked about, there was some swing and miss, right? And I go back historically, the Max Clarks, you go all the way back, lots of swing and miss from a lot of these guys throughout the summer, which we're not reporting. So what I loved about him, he showed up each day to play. Nobody has the bullseye in his back. Nobody has the microscope on them like Ethan Holiday. He handles it a different way. There's a professional demeanor. I love the hands on the dirt. And whether he's going to be a shortstop or not, he's going to be sent out at shortstop because it looks really good right now. It's a plus arm. He can throw across, power profile. If not, he's going to be a premium third baseman. I kind of equated it to like an Aiden Miller type, where for so long we were talking about Aiden Miller's a third baseman. And then after a while, you're thinking, hey, this guy's got pretty good hands. He's got a really strong arm. Why don't we just send him out at shortstop and see what happens? Right. So what did you got to see Ethan a little bit. What were your takeaways?
My takeaway is he's really, really good. That's my takeaway. My takeaway, he's big, he's physical, he's got a great bloodline. His support network around him is fantastic. We talked about that. He's very skilled defensively. He's got all the tools you can want from a profile third baseman, maybe even a shortstop. He's a really, really good player. Did he swing and miss more than I would have liked to have seen? Sure. You don't want to see a player that's loaded with that kind of ability consistently swing and miss. But the question is why? And then you have to take bets. You have to scout. Am I supposed to just, let's go back to our reporting scouting. I report that he swings and miss, so therefore he can't hit. Come on. It's ridiculous, right? He's going to be working with his dad. Josh. He's going to get a lot of ABs. You want to go scout Ethan Holiday? He's going to be playing with Oklahoma in the fall, right? So he's going to get plenty of opportunities to make some adjustments. I think he's a really good prospect. He's big, he's strong, he has the profile tools, and I'll just leave it at that. Someone asked me the other day about swinging and missing, not just with Ethan, but we want to go glass half full. Tell me how much he chased. Now as a scout, now as an organization, we're sitting around a table saying, okay, so no, I don't like the swing and miss on the heater, but did he chase? No. Then why did he swing and miss? Okay, well, maybe we make some adjustments in some swing. Maybe we make some adjustments in but you got to believe that the players make adjustments. You can't say that you can't look at me and convince me that players are getting better and improving and making adjustments in the big leagues, but they can't do it in high school. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Now,
why are you going to make those bets?
How much do you take into account? So like Ethan Holly's getting everybody's best shot. I think I saw him 60% of the time facing left on left. So he's getting the best bolt from left on left. A couple of times he's going up against like a Landon Harmon at 96, 98. It's in one at bat stints. I think you have to take that into account. The fact that like this guy's facing a different level, put him in the GCL and these guys don't know who it is. Maybe he's seeing different stuff.
So I couldn't tell you what it's like to be the number 1 recruit at LSU. I can't tell you what it's like to be a first round draft pick. I can't tell you what it's like to be Ethan Holiday. But I can tell you this. I'll bet it's not easy. I'll bet it's not easy to walk out there with Holiday on the back of your jersey. Everybody knows who you are. You were ordained as the best player in the class when you were 15 years old. To your point, which I think is a great one, you will get everybody's best bolt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show this guy. It doesn't, and he's still 17 years old, 18 years old. It's not easy, no matter how talented you are. So I think we might want to give this guy a little bit of a free pass on the challenges and appreciate how physically gifted he really is.
It's always, to me, it's easier to chase, right? The underdog, it's an easier story. You're chasing somebody in front rather than leading. So kudos to Ethan. I do want to talk about these other three because we kind of situated them together. So Brady Ebel, Kason Cunningham, Eli Willits, kind of different dynamic of player. Okay. So we're all classified as shortstop. I would say Brady, yes, we're going to send him off again. More likely, he's one of the younger kids in the draft, will not turn 18 until after draft date. Baseball genes. He's just a baseball junkie, baseball rat. Versus Kason Cunningham, who is the Jet Williams. I actually was talking a lot more Mason Wynn recently about him. If you want to drop those Texas comps on him, and then Eli Willits, who is the next level of Volpeism, where he's everybody's favorite player, is an absolute pest on the bases. He's a switch hitter. He is the youngest player in the class. I think he's like 17-7 at draft, something like that. But those three guys, you got a chance to see those three. Start with Brady Ebel. What did you like about Brady Ebel?
Before I get into the players individually, I think you're talking about something really good here. And I don't think we need to go way down this philosophical road, but valuing players and getting the position right is really, really important. Okay. Not in the amateur draft. I don't think it is. People tell me it is. It's really, really hard because of what you just said. I didn't think Aiden Miller was going to be a shortstop. I loved Aiden Miller. I didn't think he's big, he's strong, he's physical. I thought he would eventually move to third because you know what? That's what most of them do. Most of them get pushed off of shortstop. That's just kind of what it is. And it's really hard to understand which one or where that landing spot's going to be, but yet the value attached to the player matters. So that's why I like to do what you just said. They're all going to be shortstop. We're going to develop all of them as shortstops, and we're going to see what their bat allows them to do. And if they just get too big, some of them can become Troy Tulowitzki or Alex Rodriguez or Carlos Correa. But a lot of them, I thought Alex Bregman was a fantastic shortstop at LSU. He got into a circumstance where he had to play third base, so that's what he does. So let's talk about him like shortstops. Brady Ebel. Brady Ebel. Is that how I say his name?
Ebel.
If there was one player that stood out at area code games as a pure hitter, it was Brady Ebel. Yes, he did pull a lot of balls. If you want to get real in the weeds, he pulled a lot of balls. The quality of his at-bats were nothing short of outstanding. He saw a bunch of good arms. He saw a variety of arms. He saw left-handers. He saw right-handers. The consistency with which he had success in each at-bat. That doesn't mean he collected a hit, and it doesn't mean that he squared a ball up every time. Nobody does that. The consistency with which he had quality at-bats was one of the most impressive things in the entire area code event, and that includes 100 miles an hour from Seth Hernandez. The singular thing that he did in their batter's box was really, really impressive. He was always in deep counts. He was always swinging. Good swing decisions were very good. We want to go down that road. So you'd say his plate discipline was good. Did he have the loudest or the biggest raw power there? No. The quality of his ABs, the skill set that he showed you as a hitter with enough strength to believe that good hitters get to power. You walked out of the area codes and you said, that's a high level hitter. Not surprising. We've got some LA Dodgers bloodlines here and that kind of thing. So that was Brady. Was he good defensively? Yep, he was good defensively too. It's soft, it's easy, it's plus arm, all that kind of stuff. So he was probably one of the most exciting because of how skilled he showed you he was, with some solid average to plus tools to go with it. So really like Brady Ebel.
I'm a huge fan as well. Can't wait to see him in Miami. Kason Cunningham. So just to cue you up with Kason Cunningham, who has been nothing but productive. And he's about 5'9", compact frame, left-handed hitter. And you and I talked about the fact that he did show off some pull-side power. When I got to see him at trials, took really good BP, has always produced. And every time I'd see him, right, it's easy to go, he's going to shift over, profiles as second baseman. And then they put out this sexy looking 6'3" shortstop out there, and he'd go out and perform him. and he would just do it nonstop. So it's another guy where, hey, he's going to go out there until he can't do it anymore. And go into what you saw.
When you get one look at a player, and we can say the same thing about Eli Willits.
Mm-hmm.
I got one day, a day and a half, we'll say at Eli. I didn't get the full service job. I didn't get in and out. I didn't get in and out with Cunningham, and I didn't get in and out with Willits. And I got a batting practice with each of them at the MLB All-Star game in San Diego. So when you're dealt that situation and you know the player is supposed to be a guy, you kind of want to like, all right, let's see if you show me you're the guy. And to a man, both of those players showed you that they were the guy. Let's first talk about Cunningham. You're trying to find comps, although I sometimes think they're unfair because they put expectations on players. We've discussed that, but I think we have to do that because we're trying to latch on to what this player is. I don't know if you agreed or you disagreed. You threw out Mason Wynn's name. By the end of that All-Star game, I started finding myself thinking about Xavier Edwards from a few years back at Broward Prep. Not real big. And what I would say about the two players, both of them are short. Both of them can run. Both of them have bat-to-ball skills. Neither of them are driving the ball out of the yard. That's not part of who they are. Both of them look like they have control of the strike zone. The big difference, though, as much as I can say in a one-game look, Cunningham looked more, is this a word, shortstop-ish, I guess you'd say?
Yeah.
Actions, hands, more arm than Xavier Edwards. So I really liked him. He was able to make things happen at the MLB game. He stole bases. He collected hits. He looked like he was having a lot of fun, and he was one of the players, and there are a few. Seif said the other day, who goes to the USA event and then goes up to the Cape? And I'm like, I love those players. Eli Willits didn't have to fly from Panama to San Diego. He didn't have to do that, or to LA. Cunningham didn't have to do that. Quentin Young, I know he's at home. He's close to home, so it's a little bit easier for him. But Cunningham made the decision to do that. Willits made the decision to do that. That's pretty exciting to see those guys. So I did like Cunningham quite a bit. I started thinking about Xavier Edwards a little bit.
That's all. Both guys, he and Willits, we'll get to a little bit more in a second here, guys who apply the pressure to the game, right? Most looking for those athletic aptitude, aggressiveness. Those are guys who are aggressive. And Eli Willits, for as young as he is, he was not intimidated throughout the summer. I think the one thing where some guys, it may come into, is it going to be an impactful bat? Well, you start looking at it, he's on the barrel all the time. He's some of these guys, he's like 20 months younger than. So only going to get stronger, can really pick at it short. Oh, you need me in center. My man runs out to center field and looks the part out there too. So the versatility comes into play where he can kind of move around the field and the high baseball IQ. And I talk about a lot of times you get the 12-year-olds who are super famous, right? This guy's the best dude. And then at 14, he kind of slips off. And then at 16, that guy slips up. Eli's like feels the same way Volpe was. At like 10U, Anthony Volpe was the dude. And then at 12, it was like, I don't know if he'll still be the guy at 14. And then at 14, he was that guy. And then at 16, Eli Willits feels like that. Hey, every time you're going to doubt me, I'm going to step up. I have fun playing the game. I run around the field. I move around. I'm bouncy. Yeah. I can steal bags. I'm a new age player, switch hitter, dynamic. That's what I love about him. So I think they are all three of these guys kind of different, but again, they're in a tier of a lane that is going to move forward into our subsequent evaluations. So go into Eli, what you saw in that, probably 8-inning stint.
I'm going to circle back again, excuse me, to what you said about Volpe. He was the best when he was 12. You don't have to be the best at 12 and then 13 and then 14 and then continue to be the best. I love that you have that information. That provides color for me. When you share that with me, how I changed over time is I guess you always have to be a good listener when you're a scout, because you're absorbing information, you're listening to what it's telling you, and then you're applying it, But as a scouting director, when you don't have all the information, you have to listen to people that you can trust. So for you to provide that color on Cunningham makes me even like him more, because he's always hit, Willits. When players, just like Cunningham, Quentin Young was like this. When you don't get the luxury of seeing him for multiple days, multiple batting practice, it's tough for anybody to go in there, and you can't expect yourself to nail the player. The player's got to do something. Willits, he shows up at area codes, and I don't know how many times, excuse me, I was thinking about this after I watched him. I don't know how many times I've been able to say, and this is a long scouting career, 2003. I can't remember how many times a player showed up, did not take in and out, did not take batting practice, stepped into the batter's box, and within 35 minutes, what he did in the game, I went, wow, that's a guy.
I could show you the text messages from DJ. Like,
Yeah.
who is this guy?
And I wasn't, listen, Reggie Willits was a heck of a player. We understand that. We know that. It gives you a little bit of a cheat sheet when when Eli steps into the box, or, when Jackson Holiday or Ethan Holiday steps. Of course, that's a little cheat sheet, but the player still has to do it. He walks into the batter's box, long flight from Panama. He's at East Coast Pro. The very first pitch that he swings at, I can't remember if it was the second pitch he saw or the third pitch he saw. He just rifles a ball up the middle, and then he just creates a run. He steals bases. He creates a run. He runs out to shortstop without any in and out. And it was either the second inning or the third inning. Don't hold me to that. It was early in the game. The second baseman hangs him up on a 4-6-3 double play. Really easily makes a heck of a play, slows the whole play down. And he continued to do that over the course of the next, 48 to 72 hours when I went down and saw him in San Diego as well. I think I have a handle on his tools, but what's interesting is I don't really care. I don't care if it's a 55 or a 60. I don't, because he looks like he's that good of a baseball player, and his instincts were tremendous in a quick look. So he was an instinctual, good baseball player with above average tools, and he looks like he's going to be good in the middle of the field, probably at shortstop for a long time.
Let me pin you on that because it was so impactful, right? And we'll get to Nick Becker in a second, a kid out of New Jersey who did such a great job against Seth Hernandez. Those moments, how important are they for these draft prospects where this will be the thing on July 18th in that war room in Philadelphia or Toronto or Anaheim or Seattle? That will be the telling moment. Is that something that you go back to?
There's something, but they're not everything.
Okay.
There's something, but they're not everything. For the best players in the country, the player that you're going to tag as that's our guy, that is our first round pick, they will do it. And the outcome when you mess up as a scouting director, most of the time you're going to look back and go, it was right there. I saw it and I passed on it. This is a hard business. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. You just hope you win more than you lose. That's just what it is. And you hope when you lose, the loss is, well, he underperforms. He becomes good. He doesn't become great. You hope that it's not a complete bust, So the ones that outperform tend to have those moments. Whether it's the Pirates talking about Connor Griffin and what he did at the USA event after a summer of swinging and missing and kind of being raw and all those kind of things that you might tag on a player. He showed it to you at the USA event at, I think it was at Orange Park or wherever that was. Or it's, I like to go back to the Brendan Rodgers example, who now is in the big leagues, good big league player, doing what he did at East Coast Pro. It doesn't guarantee success when the player has the moment, but the good ones usually have their moment. And to your point on Eli Willits, that was a moment. That was a moment. I don't know what will become of Nick Becker. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Nick Becker is the best player that I've ever seen, or that Nick Becker is going to be an everyday big league shortstop. There's a lot more work that has to be done. But I can tell you this, Seth Hernandez has the best arm by far in the high school class. He might have the best arm over the last multiple years. I don't know if he's the best pitcher, if he has the best breaking ball, but just sheer velocity when he's pitching at 98 to 100 and a kid from the Mid-Atlantic steps in there and he's fouling pitches off. He hits a home run foul on 98, gets his barrel out, and it's not a fluke. He did it the whole event. You see that. It doesn't mean that I'm going to pull Nick Becker's magnet next July. It just means that as this evolves, I will never forget what he did. Whether we take him or we don't take him, that'll be a memorable moment for the player, and it's usually pretty good. And there's other players that do those things.
You talked about having that background info, I talked to you about Casey Cunningham producing, even Nick Becker, who had huge spring for Don Bosco Prep in New Jersey. He's actually a New York kid. They're claiming him in New Jersey for high school. But having those background, I do think underclass wise, and we'll get into this with the pitching, hitting is ultra important. You can get a ton of background from the hitter, having that longer range of track record versus a pitcher where I'm not positive, haven't done this for almost 10 years now, a lot with the underclass, just how much you get out of the underclass pitching, because so much can be done late pitching
No
wise,
doubt.
but you can get a lot out of some hitters. I mean, you can look at this year's draft. I mean, shoot, look at Colt Emerson last year. He was a guy. There's a lot of background. Nick Becker is a good one there. But I do want to shift over or go ahead.
We get really granular. I don't want to take up too much time here with this stuff, but because you make a good point. I'm not going to get too granular with the hitting, because we can get as deep as you want to get, and we can talk. We have all this wonderful data, and I'm getting it thrown and slung my way. Well, this is the data point. People are just creating their own narratives. If he doesn't have this, he can't do that. I think sometimes let's keep it really simple. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to ask you to give me any data. I'm just going to say, Shooter, has Kason Cunningham been pretty good? And when you say, yes, he has, that to me says, and in his peer group over multiple years, this guy just keeps collecting hits and producing. That's good enough for me. Because if I get too granular and I anchor myself into some obscure stat that does not mean anything, and then I make a decision, I've done that before. I've made those mistakes. I kick myself for them. The best decisions I've made is when I've just kind of stepped back and said, is this guy a good hitter or not? Versus leaning into one data point. And it's scary because we have so much now. So we have to watch out for that. We have to protect ourselves from that.
So moving on, some more shortstops. And I would say this is where you start having to get to the decisions. And our next top guy is Billy Carlson, who,
oh yeah,
honestly, is silky smooth at shortstop. He's probably the best defensive guy. I mean, Willis would challenge him for that, but like SoCal shortstops are what I always talk about because they're just different. Now they do get to play in the nicest fields, so they do get much better hops than what I was looking at my high school here recently in North Jersey. But Billy Carlson, even we had Coy James is on right after him. Shortstop, outfield. We can talk a little about that about his summer, which was very much up and down. There are still loud tools there, but I would honestly, with Coy James, I would go back into there's a ton of history. This guy's produced. What I'm always looking at with a guy like Coy James, like he's from North Carolina. Bingo. And something about North Carolina and those kids just continue to get better. And whether he had a tough outing at USA or the week before was an MVP, like whatever it may be, Coy James has always brought it to the field. I thought his defense looked much better at shortstop this year. That was the one big takeaway for me where he went into a lane. He's going to stick here. Okay. He's figuring some stuff out with his swing. We'll see. But going back to Billy Carlson, smooth as can be, still wiry athletic. He's adding that strength of the frame. I think we have the number 6 right-handed arm in the class. So like that, I don't know if there's a fallback there. But the fact that he can stick up the middle shortstop, the bat continues to come along. And again, he's at Corona High School, so he's going to get plenty of eyes. Yeah. Tell me what you saw with those two guys, because you got a pretty good look at both.
So Carlson, let me just start with the negative. I don't like to do this usually. I'm just going to start with the negative on Carlson. I don't know if he's going to hit. It's kind of it's a tough one. He doesn't look real strong and this and that. So I'm just going to start there. Okay. With that being said, silky smooth defender with an absolute bananas arm. Most of the time when you talk about profile shortstops, we have to work really, really hard to say, I think he can stick there. And most of the time, because you're going to deal with like a guy that has a really good arm and has a shortstop arm, but he's got a third base body, and he's going to keep getting bigger and stronger. Or you get the guy that has great actions and you feel like his hands play and his feet play, but you're like, it's a 50 arm. Well, 50, I don't want to hear about Craig Counsell and all this kind of stuff. Guys that play shortstop with below average arms, you got to be able to really throw to play shortstop in the big leagues. Please don't cherry pick players that don't throw really well, because that's just, you don't make decisions based upon that. This guy can really, really throw. And we have to get into this. I want to know what's going on with the bat. I want to know, is it bad? Is it fair? Is it average? Is it good? I'd really want to get in the weeds with who he's working with, what types of things he thinks about, because the difference between him being a true first round pick, and something thereafter is probably going to be your comfort level with the bat. I remember our decision on, you and I spoke about this recently. He's with the Rays now. He's a really good looking player, shortstop. We missed. He's from La Jolla area. Some guys thought he was a pitcher. Do you remember who I was? Carson Williams.
Carson Williams, yes.
Yeah, Carson Williams can really, he was a pitcher, he can really throw, and we just completely botched it. And now he's pretty good. So you got to really get into this with him, with Billy Carlson, about what you think of the bat, what's his history with the bat, what's he doing to get himself better.
Let me stop you.
Miss a lot.
Let me stop you there. How important is it, the fact that he goes to Corona, he's from Orange County, he's from Southern California, versus what you would walk away from if he was from Ohio or he was from upstate New York?
Yeah, it makes you feel better.
Like,
it does.
It's interesting that you kind of get some more lottery tickets because the comfort level of, we're right here, we'll see him a bunch. He had a big time moment at NHSI last year. Like, there are a lot of good things going for Billy.
Yeah. My whole offseason would revolve around getting to know him as a hitter. What's he trying to do? What's he thinking about in the box? Those types of things that you rely on the area scout for. Rely on the regional cross checker for. They have to have those answers. And they can get a scouting director comfortable, or they can make a scouting director really uncomfortable if they don't dig in and figure that out. And the worst thing is when you don't do that, another team does. They pull him off the board. He goes out and he's good. And, Gunnar Henderson, I used that example earlier. It's really disappointing when you miss on that. So
let's shift over to Coy James, who,
I'm
not going to say he's the most polarizing, but he's got a chance to be in that top 5 most polarizing guys after summer, up and down. I think the way we have established our lane is I like to bet on Coy James. That's where we're kind of at the level of, like, this is an athlete. He has freakish tools, right? What's the first thing you talked about East Coast Pro is this guy's playing pepper with the center field batter's eye right now, and nobody's doing that.
Yep.
So tell me from there, walk me through, you're seeing him for the first time. I've kind of teed you up with, like, this is kind of where we're at on this kid. Take a look. And all of a sudden he's trying to knock things down in Hoover and center field and anything early. What was going on from there?
This is a little bit of the Ethan Holiday thing. I don't know. Maybe it's a human nature thing. Maybe it's a scouting thing. Maybe rhetorically, why is it that when a player is supposed to be really good, a scout sometimes walks in and goes, we'll see. Because when you do that and you catch Coy James at East Coast Pro, if your mentality going in is that, we'll see if he's that good, you're going to leave East Coast Pro and go, he's not any good because he can't make contact. All he does is strike out. But that's not the whole story here. You go in with an optimistic view. It has to be glass half full. What can this player do? This player was really good for a long time. You nailed it. At all these different events he goes to, at all these tournaments that he goes to, he's really, really good. So he lays an egg at East Coast Pro. Big deal. There's been good players that have done that before. Coy's had his moment all along for the last multiple years. And to your point, watching him, for anybody that's been to Hoover and experienced the heat and the humidity and how big that field plays, whether you're a high school player or you're playing in the Southern League trying to run the ball out of that yard. I know they play over at Regents Park now, but that is a big, big yard. 402 to center with 2 fences. The fence behind it might be 15 feet high, batter's eye, and he's leaving easy. Easy. This isn't grunting and muscling up. He's easily leaving over the second wall. That's a big deal because you know how many players did that in Hoover? There's players with raw power. We can list a lot of them. Zero players did that. And Coy is strong, but he wasn't the biggest, strongest guy there. No. And he was doing it easy. So the question is what's going to happen with his swing? What is it, a setup thing? Is it a loading action thing? Because he does everything defensively you want to see. Whether he made a hell of a play, but very first game he played at East Coast Pro, he ranges behind second base, spins, throws. You're like, wow, that's a really good defender. Now he isn't a great runner. Like Brady Ebel's not a great runner. So maybe Coy ultimately moves off of shortstop. I'm not ready to say that yet. But we know that he's going to be a very good defender in the big leagues somewhere. And make no mistake, he's got serious power. I was excited about where he left.
You're describing a guy right now where I'm like, don't let him get to Baltimore. Don't you let that guy who is freaky
That's right.
athlete. There's some swing and miss there. Don't let him get to Baltimore. It'll get good in a hurry.
Well, it's a polarizing thing, Shooter. Like the pendulum swings back and forth, and we want tools, and then we want performance, and now we've got all this data, so people lean into that. They lean into it to create their own narratives, and they forget what this is all about. And I will say it again: with the high school player, it is about the tools and the profile first. Then it's the data. It is the tools and the profile first, then it's the data. We might be talking a little bit different if we were talking about a 21 or 22-year-old college guy. That's why we like those guys. They give us the comfort of SEC performance and so on. But the high school guys, you got to be more creative. You got to be a scout.
We are adamantly proponents of area guys on this show. Where does like the makeup and the behind the scenes stuff, because that's what I'm always adamant about. Hey, we got this guy in this tier. Now let's break down how is he going to get better. So you talked about Billy Carlson. I want to learn about how he's hitting. What's his plan at the plate? Those are the things that I dive into. Is this guy a winner? So like Colt Emerson, JD Dix, going all the way back, like that was the dude. We had great intel for years. Hey, Colt Emerson is that guy. JD Dix is that guy. Luke Dickerson is that guy. So those were tons of our notes, which was a huge reason why we kept lifting them up. How important that is that to a scouting director, and how much do you lean on an area guy to have that info?
Absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. Kind of about that whole volume and diversity of looks. I got what you would say is a snapshot of Billy Carlson. Heck, maybe Brady Ebel's not the hitter that I saw. I don't know. I could tell you in that snapshot, he was awesome. I could tell you in my snapshot, Eli Willits was awesome. I could tell you when I watch Carlson or I watch Coy James, not as good. But that doesn't define who they are. And therein lies the necessity to have area scouts and regional cross-checkers lay out the history of the player. It is their job to follow up with resources like Prep Baseball. Why wouldn't somebody call you? And if nothing else, say, hey, Shooter, I've known you for a long time. I'm really struggling with this Cunningham report. I'm really struggling with this Billy Carlson report. I know he's a good defender. He does it. Like, I didn't see this guy hit. Why wouldn't you rely on a resource like Prep Baseball to say, no, this guy's always hit? Ultimately, you would like your area scout to do that. But there are resources out there for organizations to find this stuff out. And it's really, really important. You're going to miss. Hopefully the area scouts are doing it.
And you know, we're going to get to a full corner piece with guys that are not up the middle. And I will go into depth on a lot of that data sets that make you feel much more comfortable about those guys. But moving on into the shortstop group, we had Carlson, Coy James. This is another grouping where, for me, it was like kind of guys who have elevated. There's some tools, either a loud tool set, production. These are guys I would be glued in on. So JoJo Parker, who had a great summer, Mississippi kid that you saw early on in the year at the Knights Nation. Carson Brumbaugh, who was banged up at the end of the spring, didn't have a great summer, huge metrics, a guy that really want to be glued in on. I'm hoping to see him at the Super 60 for us in February. Be another big Oklahoma kid coming to that. Tate Salazine, who had an awesome summer, Nevada kid. He might be the best Salazine at this point.
Let me stop that. I got to stop you there. You're talking about moments. Tate Salazine. Oh my gosh. Day one of the area code games. If we had video, I think I sent you the video when he squared up that ball to center field. Just listen to the crowd. That tells you everything you need to know about what just transpired at the plate. It was one of the loudest, from a guy that's not really big. That was some of the loudest contact of the entire summer. That moment when he lined out to the center field, tremendous.
Did you get to see his brother Ty at all? So
just a little bit, just for a minute.
So let me ask you this, because he's bigger now. The whole family, they have the same stance. Like there's a lot going on, right, with the hands.
Mm-hmm.
Does it help that his brother's already gone, where people will say like, no, this thing will work. It's fine.
Sure. Yeah. Is it any different? Like we'll go back to Ethan and Jackson Holiday. When a player's good, okay, a player has to be good on his own accord. Mm-hmm. But then when you layer on that, a family bloodline or a swing that the player's been around that you might have been uncomfortable with, that you see working, of course you're going to get more comfortable. That's all. That's just natural. So, man, he's got some lightning in his mix.
Some sneaky juice. And what I love about him is the chip on his shoulder, whether he would admit or not, great kid. The fact that he's been in the shadow, makes me like him even more. He's been fighting uphill. He has not been anointed. His brother's the dude.
Mhm.
His younger brother's good. He's kind of been stuck there. Hey, Limelight's yours right now. Awesome summer. Just really hit the ball hard, which was something that I took away. But moving on, Nick Becker, Josh Gibbs, even Matthew Farrar's another Jersey kid in here. Those are all like kind of intriguing in a lane guys, right? They have some huge upside in some senses. And then, hey, we're going to need a multitude of looks in other sense. That's how I look at that grouping.
That's right. And you ask questions. This is interesting because now we're in a tier or so below. You like the player, but you can't put them up with the other guys. But interestingly enough, every single year, one or two of those players from the lane you just described will surpass one of those other guys. You're going to show up in March. And who did you say? Ferrara. Ferrara is going to walk out on the field and you're going to go, oh my gosh, he's 15 pounds heavier. Wow. Hopefully along that pathway of the next 6 or 7 months, your scouting staff preps you up for that. So it's not a surprise moment, but you don't know that he's not going to do that. If he does and his raw power gets bit, now all of a sudden it's a different player. We already know that Matthew Ferrara has really good high quality ABs. We know that he can hit. He sprays the ball around the field, this and that. Is he going to take that next jump with his power?
It's one of the great things that we have is that there is so much collection internally for us with background information, historical data sets to where, hey, we have them positioned here. If they're going to make a jump, we're going to know. You talk about Matthew Ferrara, Tom's River kid. He's from a really good high school program, from an area that has produced some really good baseball talent in the past. Nick Becker's at Don Bosco, huge upside. His brother's a big-time prospect at UVA right now, who I'm sure there's Northeast guys who are kicking themselves saying, we were there with Colin Dana the whole way. We knew this kid was really good. Now we're going to pay him 6 times what he would have been. Josh Gibbs, let's go over to there because Josh Gibbs was a guy that I had you lock in on at NPI, at East Coast Pro. And one of the big things is like not the biggest kid, right? It's about 5'11-ish, thin. And I told you going in, I said, this kid thinks he's the best player at all times. And it's one of the things we love about him. We go to Ian Smith in Georgia, does such a great job. He's been pushing Josh Gibbs for forever. There's a lot going on in the swing for me. The hand load, he is geared up. Now he is on time a lot. And kind of similar to Salvador. We could do a nice little side-by-side with those two. We put them up on the board. And maybe we will as the spring goes along. How important is it for Josh Gibbs to, one, continue performing? He's going to have to perform the whole way. 2, the fact that he's from Georgia, does that play a huge part? Those guys, they're like wolves who haven't eaten in weeks because of this 2024 class. They're throwing some meat. He had a good summer. What did you get out of Josh Gibbs?
Georgia. I saw Gibby play a lot. Watched him a lot. He was playing on that East Cobb Astros team at the NPI. So his teammate's really good too. What's Bowen's first name? Fausti was there. Eisenfelter was there. Terrence Bowen was there. Gibby was playing a combination of like second and short and this and that. I like your, the comparison between him and Southsea. Okay. Neither of those players have tool sets that are going to light you up if they don't hit. You just be very clear. And those types of players can make you look really, really good. The key is, have they hit? You really got to know that because they do have higher maintenance swings. I'd say Gibby's is a little bit higher maintenance than Salthacene. Salthacene's a little quieter with his lower half. Salthacene's a little simpler with how he does it. He just has a lower hand load, a little bit like Terrence Bowen. Carries his hands pretty low, loads them, and then buggy whips the ball. Barrel really works at release and all that kind of stuff. Gibby just has a lot more going on with his lower half. It's almost like it's a Zach Neto kind of thing. So for those types of players, they have to produce because you're going to end up, ultimately what's going to happen is they're going to big, high-powered schools. And if they don't produce consistently, you're just going to end up in a situation in a lane that's like, I'm not sure if this guy's going to be signable for what we can do because you can't make the bet. If he's got a big high maintenance swing and he doesn't produce and there's not much else going on in the game, where he's an elite shortstop or he's an elite center fielder or something, it becomes a more difficult bet. So you're looking for those players to continue to produce in the game. That's one of the Gibby's BP was one of the funnest BPs to watch at East Coast Pro. He's not the biggest guy, and it was loud. It was good.
The background, his dad was Taekwondo or Jiu-Jitsu, Olympia. It was very fascinating to learn about his ground force, what he's trying to do. I'm looking forward to going to see him this spring. We've gone really long on these shortstops here. I just want to wrap up a little bit more because, again, with our rankings process, just the groupings and how large the differential, right? We talked about those top 5 who are all in the top 10. Then you go into this next group, which might be from like 15 to 60. And then you go into the kind of the final group that we have grouped in our top 30 shortstops, where you're looking at 75 to 200. Like if you're just looking at the numbers, and it may look like a huge differential, but in actuality, when you're tiering them, you're putting them in a lane. These guys are very similar, and we're not dismissing anybody, not putting this guy away, but more so saying, hey, these guys are really good. We're putting them here. Whereas Ethan Klaus has been really good, LSU commit. Matthew Botton's a shortstop from Texas, right. Dallas area kid, was really good at area codes, a little bit older for the class, can really pick it. He's a guy that guys really like, son good of a player. Coach. But like these are all Ty Dunning, who did not do the national circuit, but he's a shortstop at J. Sarah. He's going to get tons of looks. Landon Schaefer, who was outstanding all summer. Looks the part, 6'3". These guys are all in a group where you talked about some of those guys, the Tate Saldazines, the Gibbies, who could jump some guys. These are all dudes who can definitely do the same.
Well, I don't want to get long-winded here. I can get very long-winded at times, but the lanes and the tiering that you're talking about, the last thing you want a scout to do is don't tell me why he's not in the lane above. Tell me why you love him in the lane that he's in. So if you're talking about, we talk about Gibby, right? We talk about Southacene. If they're existing in the same lane, they're existing there because they're apples to apples. They're kind of the same thing. They're not oranges. Ethan Holiday's an orange. Okay. And it's really, really important to understand that. What is it that makes that allows a player to exist in B? What allows a player to exist in A, and just love them for the lane that they're in as you approach the spring? Okay. If a player makes a jump, if an apple becomes an orange, great. But I would lob this out there. The guardrails are tight for me personally. I'm hypercritical. I'm hyper conscious. When I take a high school player and I stick them in the lane, it is very, very hard for me to backtrack come the spring. I might go forward because he might get stronger. He might change his swing like Gavin Lux did. But why would I go backwards? If I said, hey, I'm going to go out and do a good job, I'm going to get the tools right, I'm going to understand the performance, I'm going to think critically about the player, and you set up the lanes, Shooter, as the leader of the department, and you say, here's the lanes. And I say, yes, Gibby, Southacene, Holiday, this is the lane they exist in right now. Why would they go backwards? The player's not, I guess they could, but more often than not, they shouldn't go backwards. If anything, you get the improvement. You show up and Matthew Ferrara's 15 pounds heavier. You show up and Southacene quieted down his hands a little bit and he looks a little better at shortstop. You show up and Gavin Lux eliminates the hitch that he had in his swing. You go, well, he's going up a lane. But they shouldn't be going backwards. Specifically, high school hitters. To be clear, high school hitters. Otherwise, you can really trap yourself. And you can say, well, you liked him in the first round in the summer. Now are you getting cold feet because he's not performing well? So how you put these guys in their groups, these high school hitters, is really, really important.
Well, if we've taken anything away from today, scouting versus reporting, remember that one. Shout out to Rhett the Jet, who's our producer, who's produced all this stuff. We've got a bunch of great topics coming from this 2025 class. We've eliminated the shortstops, the premium guys, the bonus babies off. But the more interesting ones are coming because we got to get to the pitching. So corner profile guys who can really hit, whether the outfielders, catcher, or outfielders, corner infielders. We're going to talk catching, right-handed pitchers, left-handed pitchers. DJ, we have so much to decipher, but we're going to split up into multiple episodes. So thank you all for coming to the War Room. We'll see you next time.